I don't even know where to begin. I need to type this out, every agonizing detail, because if I keep it inside, I think the sheer shock and betrayal are going to split me in half. This isn't a boyfriend or a sister. This is Arthur Harrison, my high school economics teacher, the man I trusted more than almost anyone in my life, the man who was supposed to be my mentor. I'm 21. I work 2 jobs while taking online college courses. My parents both passed away a few years ago, so I've been entirely on my own since I turned 18. Every penny I earn goes toward rent, utilities, and tuition. My entire safety net, my entire savings of $9,300 was in a small account I rarely touched. It was my eviction prevention fund, my future emergency brake. Mr. Harrison was my economics teacher for 4 years. He took me under his wing, helped me with financial aid applications, and coached me through job interviews. When I turned 18, he even helped me set up my first real bank account. He knew my situation intimately. He knew I was one paycheck away from disaster at any given time. He was always telling me how proud he was of my financial discipline. Because I travel a lot between my jobs and school, and because I'm technologically inept, I had asked Mr. Harrison to be a joint signer on my savings account. This was a couple of years ago. The reason? He convinced me it was a safety measure. If I were ever hospitalized and needed rent paid or utilities handled, he could access it quickly without complicated legal hurdles. He said he would never touch it unless I gave him explicit verbal permission and only from my benefit. I was young, trusting, and saw him as the closest thing I had to a father figure. I gave him the access. 2 months later, my world went sideways. I woke up with excruciating abdominal pain. It was blinding. I rushed myself to the nearest clinic, and within an hour, I was being prepped for emergency appendix surgery, acute appendicitis. If I hadn't gone in when I did, the doctor said it would have ruptured and my survival odds would have plummeted. As they were wheeling me into the operating room, dizzy with pain and fear, I managed to call Mr. Harrison. "Mr. Harrison?" I gasped, my voice thin. "I'm in the hospital. Emergency surgery. Appendix. I won't be able to pay my rent this week. Can you please transfer the rent, $1,500, from my savings to my checking? I'll call you as soon as I'm out." "Oh, goodness, Marcy, that's awful. Don't you worry about a thing. I'll take care of it. You focus on getting better. I'll check on everything. Call me when you wake up," he assured me, his voice warm and paternal. I went under the knife feeling scared, but relieved that my trusted mentor was handling things. I survived the surgery, thankfully, but my recovery was brutal. Appendectomy isn't minor. I was in the hospital for 3 days, racked with pain and barely coherent. I was also incredibly worried about my finances, as I'd miss at least a week of work. When I finally got discharged and returned to my small, empty apartment, I tried to call Mr. Harrison. His phone went straight to voicemail. I texted, no reply. For the next 3 days, silence. I checked my bank accounts online, logging in with shaking hands. The rent hadn't been paid. My checking account was dangerously low. I clicked over to my savings account. The $9,300 was gone. Zero balance. My heart stopped. Not $1,500 for the rent, the entire $9,300 vanished. I called the bank immediately, hysterical. "There's a mistake. The balance is wrong. Someone stole my money." The bank manager was professional but cold. "Ms. Wells, the full balance of $9,300 was withdrawn via a wire transfer on the day of your surgery. The transaction was initiated and authorized by the joint account holder, Arthur Harrison." I sank onto my floor. The full amount. The day I was lying unconscious, stitched up, fighting an infection. The realization was a dizzying, sickening blow. The man I'd trusted wiped out my entire safety net the moment he knew I was incapacitated. I kept calling him, texting. Finally, late that Friday night, Mr. Harrison called me back. He sounded happy, loud, and slightly drunk. "Hey, kiddo! Oh man, that was some weekend." "Mr. Harrison, my savings, what did you do? The entire account is empty. I asked you to transfer $1,500 for the rent." His tone immediately shifted from boisterous to annoyed. "Look, don't yell at me. I did you a favor. I closed the whole account. I didn't want you leaving money sitting there. Inflation, you know?" "You stole $9,300. That was for my future. My rent is late." "Look, I needed some operating capital for a business venture. I'll pay you back. I had a great opportunity and I seized it. You should be proud of my economic acumen. And honestly, you're being really selfish. I'm your mentor. You should be supporting my endeavors. You have a job. You'll make it back." The nerve. The sheer, breathtaking gaslighting. He stole my life savings and called me selfish for being upset. "What business venture, Mr. Harrison? Where did you go?" I asked, my voice deadly quiet. He let out a loud, sloppy laugh. "I told the guys I needed cash fast to cover my share. We were heading to Key West. The marlin are biting and you can't fish the Keys without a proper deep-sea charter. The gear, the boat, the cabin, it cost a fortune, but man, was it worth it." My mind's reeled. He didn't steal my money for a medical emergency, a struggling family member, or even a desperate gambling habit. He stole my entire life savings. Every dollar I had, I struggled to save for 3 years to go deep-sea fishing with his buddies in the Florida Keys. The ultimate betrayal. My survival and stability were worth less than a few days on a charter boat. I hung up, shaking too violently to speak. The consequences were immediate and catastrophic. I couldn't pay the back rent plus the late fees. My landlord, a corporation with no soul, served me an eviction notice just 1 week after my surgery. I was physically incapable of packing, mentally shattered, and financially ruined. I lost my apartment. I had to scramble to move my few possessions into a small storage unit and temporarily sleep on my friend Sarah's couch, a tiny space that felt smaller every day. My recovery suffered immensely under the stress. I contacted the police, but they were initially dismissive. "It's a joint account, ma'am. He has access. It's a civil matter." A civil matter. $9,300 stolen from a student who just had emergency surgery for a fishing trip. I felt completely abandoned. That's when I turned to the only power structure that could touch him, the school board. Mr. Harrison had tenure. He was untouchable, the star teacher, the financial guru. I knew I had to make the case undeniable. I gathered my evidence. My hospital admission and discharge papers, dated the day of the transfer. The bank statement showing the zero balance and the wire transfer out. The text messages where I explicitly authorized $1,500 for rent, not the full $9,300. The eviction notice. I requested a meeting with the school board's superintendent and the head of the ethics committee. I walked into that meeting on shaky legs, still healing, armed with my binder of receipts. I laid out the timeline. He was aware of my life-threatening surgery. I authorized a specific $1,500 for rent. He took $9,300, the full amount, while I was unconscious. He used the money to charter a deep-sea fishing boat in Key West. I was subsequently evicted. His theft directly caused a financial and housing crisis for a former student who relies entirely on herself. The committee members looked skeptical. The superintendent shook his head. "Miss Wells, Mr. Harrison is a highly valued, tenured teacher. This sounds like a personal financial dispute. His tenure protection is very strong. Unless you can prove criminal intent and use of the funds directly tied to his professional conduct, we can't act." "Tenure protection?" I repeated, a cold fury rising. So he gets to steal money from a vulnerable, recovering student because he's a good economics teacher? We advise you to pursue civil action, the committee head stated, already closing his notebook. I looked at the smug, dismissive faces around the table, the faces of institutional protectionism, and I knew the only thing that would penetrate their bureaucratic armor wasn't my personal tragedy. It was his professional misconduct. Fine, I said, pulling out the final piece of evidence I had been saving. You want proof of criminal intent linked to his profession? You want to know where the money went? I did some digging. I slammed down a printout of a bank transfer receipt I'd requested under the Freedom of Information Act linked to his account and public records. It was a transfer of $5,000 from his personal checking account 2 days before he stole my money to an entity called Ocean's Bounty Charter Holdings. He was short $5,000 for the fishing trip. He already booked it, committed to his friends, and didn't have the cash. He didn't want to back out and look bad. He needed $9,300 to cover the remaining charter cost and his weekend expenses. He needed cash, fast, and he chose the day I was incapacitated to commit the theft, knowing I couldn't stop him. I then presented a screenshot of an email sent from his professional school email address to a fellow teacher detailing the trip, which he had accidentally forwarded to a student email group years ago, a mistake I had kept buried in an old inbox. The email mentioned needing to borrow a large sum to cover the cost. I used his status as my mentor, acquired through his employment at your school, to gain access to my life savings. He prioritized a weekend of leisure over the financial stability and housing security of a student he swore to protect. He demonstrated a spectacular lack of financial ethics and moral integrity. This isn't a civil dispute. This is theft by fiduciary abuse, and I'm pursuing criminal charges. And if you continue to protect him, I will take this evidence, the police report, and your dismissal of my claim to every local news outlet and state representative, making it clear that your school system harbors and protects known financial abusers. The air in the room completely changed. The superintendent looked like he'd swallowed glass. The committee head suddenly looked very, very interested in his notebook again. Mr. Harrison will be placed on immediate, unpaid administrative leave pending a thorough internal investigation, the superintendent announced, his voice suddenly sharp with urgency. Miss Wells, we will cooperate fully. We take these accusations seriously. I finally got my justice. The school board initiated proceedings to strip him of his tenure. The police, armed with the bank transfer proof and the school's cooperation, immediately upgraded the charge to criminal fraud. The final gut punch came a week later. I was sitting on my friend Sarah's couch when I saw a social media post from one of Mr. Harrison's fishing buddies, a group photo on the charter boat in Key West. There was Mr. Harrison, beaming, holding up a massive marlin. The caption, "Best trip ever. Wouldn't trade those 4 days for anything. Thanks for covering the charter, Art. You the man." I took a deep breath. I may have lost my home and my savings, but I finally had peace. He lost his career, his tenure, his reputation, and now faces criminal charges. His hot streak is over. And I, the student he deemed too helpless to fight back, was the one who taught him the final, unforgiving lesson in economics. There is always a cost for moral bankruptcy.